I know that one of the questions that happened this morning in the earlier session, Ghassan and I were talking, was, Cisco, why are you now moving into security so aggressively? Two things. Number one, you're seeing almost 16 years worth of work come to fruition now. We really started our project of getting ready for this over a decade ago. And one of the parts that Cisco can do very rapidly is scale. And to scale, you have to be very, very thoughtful on how you build things. Because as soon as you turn the Cisco sales force and our partner and channel on, it will very quickly be sold and implemented into hundreds of thousands of customers. As a result, it may look like we're only doing this now, but in truth, we've been working on it for quite a while. And the work was to be ready so that we scaled. Now there are pure play security companies down here in Latam. I know you know Fortinet. I know you know Palo Alto. You also know companies like Symantec and McAfee as a global brand. We install as many firewalls in a quarter that Palo Alto installs in a year. And so our scale has to accommodate that, which is why it looks like this is something we're doing now, but in truth, it's been something we've been building for a very, very long time. That's number one. Number two is, of course, our customers. Our customers are saying to us, we need a strategic security partner that can cover most of what we need to do in one-to-one company relationship. The average large company uses over 40 vendors in security, and it's too complicated, it's too difficult to maintain, and it takes too many people to keep it running. And so our customers said to us, if you can build it where it's integrated, it's lower cost, and it's easier to operate, all the while being just as effective or more effective than those 40 vendors, our customers said to us, we will lean in and Cisco will be our strategic partner. There are now multiple examples where we are now the largest and most important strategic security partner to customers of ours, number one in our history, but also independently, we are the number one security strategic vendor. That took time. It took engineering of 4,000 people working on these projects and programs. And it took our customers working with us so we knew that we were building the right things. So it looks new, it looks like it's now, but it isn't. We've been building up to these moments for a long time. We're just happy that we're here now because all that hard work will continue, but the big, big pieces of it that we needed to build are done, and now we can actually build on top of it in order to help our customers even more. Now the floor is yours. I hope you have plenty of really hard questions for Ghassan.
Thank you so much.
I'll take all the easy questions.
I'd like to understand more about this last transition to security and how it's so important in the new strategy, the new Cisco. I'd like to know more about this last acquisition,
Duo
system, and how is important this acquisition in this new strategy, security strategy.
So Duo was only possible after we had the next generation firewall done, the virtualized data center done, the edge and data of Umbrella complete and scaling. And part of what we wanted and were very thoughtful about was what's next after that, and after that. Duo, first of all, has been incredibly successful all by itself. Long before we got close to them, and we've gotten closer and closer before we acquired them, and of course now have. And as you might imagine, we have customers that are in all different places of what security model they want to operate. For example, we have some customers that just will not move their data center to cloud because that's their architecture and their decision. We have other customers that are exactly the opposite, which is they don't want a data center of their own anymore. They want to move all the services that they operate to cloud. We have certain customers that have strong perimeter defense, and that's how they've chosen to build the layered defense from the internet in. And there are other customers that have said, no, we actually believe in zero trust models like what Duo provides. The data center to cloud transition we've succeeded in. So that set of customers, if they have their own data centers, they've moved completely to cloud or somewhere in between, we have that pretty well covered. We have multi-cloud, we have Umbrella, we have virtualized software appliances for firewalls and intrusion protection. So we have this part covered. This notion of perimeter to zero trust, we didn't yet until we got Duo into the portfolio. So now we have a strong identity solution that's multi-factor, which is another area we did not have any investment in yet. We have zero trust models, which is to use identity itself as its own perimeter. And we have a new set of customers that we have an answer for because we have zero trust as the actual architecture as an option. So you asked how important it is. If you looked at the price tag of what we just paid for Duo, I think that kind of explains how important it is, because that was one of our largest acquisitions from a dollar perspective, and one of the more critical items for our way forward in order to help our customers.
And do you think you have more acquisitions next year? Because you are doing the fiscal year.
I'll let you do that. Okay. We will always build. We will always build, buy, and partner. I promise you this. This is our strategy where we innovate internally, we acquire companies, and we partner with companies. There's always a question of timing, and part of it is not only market timing, but we have to be very careful when we acquire companies that we don't disrupt their success as we're integrating into our company. So for example, when we buy a company like Duo, we want them to succeed the way they were succeeding, and yet still be able to work together so we can leverage the power of Cisco and the power of Duo together. If you try to do that with too many companies at the same time, so if we bought another big one too soon, we'd be trying to integrate too much, and then something would probably go wrong. Equally so, we don't want to lose an opportunity. So it's a really delicate balance. I will say this though, it's pretty clear from our CEO, Chuck Robbins, our CFO, Kelly Kramer, and then certainly our entire customer base, that they want us to continue to expand the offers and grow. And it's very much our intent to continue to be very successful and grow the security business. Some of that will happen because of what we already have. Some of that will happen because of what we're inventing and innovating. And so the answer is yes, maybe next year, maybe not.
talking about security as a business, we can expect from Cisco to have the same importance in your revenues. Like, nowadays it has like 5% of your revenues. So we can expect in the short term to have the same value as infrastructure platforms.
So as you might imagine, I'm not going to give you forward-looking information on our financials. I wouldn't do that. There's a question there where I would say that our customers have said infrastructure and security are exactly the same thing in their minds in terms of importance. And we oftentimes are just reflecting against what our customers are asking for us. And so in some respects, the tie between, say, Umbrella and the SD-WAN that Pella offers, or the work we're doing with security in ACI in the data centers, or even just something like what we've tied in on AMP across infrastructure and email, web, the ISRs, and the implementation of AMP and Umbrella in our Catalyst lines. All of this should tell you we're actually connecting the two. Security and infrastructure are actually coupling, because we think this is the long strategy game, where infrastructure itself is protecting everything it touches. Now, part of that is because everything touches a network. And somewhere, somehow, be it wireless or wired, campus or service provider, a network has a role automatically, if we design it right, to tie it in, which means infrastructure does as well. So I won't give you forward financials, but I'll tell you strategically, we see both as important as one another, but even more important that we can tie them together to deliver the best value for what our customers have.
Por favor, si se puede, la próxima pregunta, si se puede identificar a quién le hace la pregunta. Aquí.
I am Julia from Brazil. You mentioned that the clients have different approaches on their security models. How is Latin America view on the zero trust model? Do you expect Google to be a significant part of the security strategy in Latin America?
So in Latam, small and medium business in particular is where this got the strongest play. And so at a global level, just as much as here, we see it as a certain percentage. I'm actually going to have Gaston talk specifically about his experience so far, because he can actually give you the headwind and the tailwinds of where we're experiencing right now in Duo. However, I just want to point out, though, the statistical trends in the studies, for example, that we just released last week in the cybersecurity report for Latam, would tell you where we see it, because we've been surveying each market in order to get answers, including Latam's in the report that we saw last week. Download that if you don't already have it, though I think all of you do anyway, because it'll touch on this, and I'll turn it over to Gaston for further comment.
Thank you. I think it's a great point, and as John said, it's a specific thing for some markets, but in our specific market, what we have actual scenario. We are evolving in terms of networking. We are evolving in terms of adoption, in terms of solutions. So Duo is, as John said, it's a very important point. It's a part of a process to this evolution, right? In Latam, we still need to evolve in terms of, I don't say basics, but the base of the network, the segmentation, the inclusion of services and adoptions in order to take advantage of new solutions or new architectures like Duo. But also, Latam is so huge, the market is so important, that every time that we start to do or creating this type of discussion with you guys, we got some surprises in terms of companies that are growing faster in the market. So this is happening a lot. So Duo is already present in Latam. Duo has a lot of customers buying a new solution in Latam. So I met some customers here this morning. They are using Duo before the acquisition. So they are present. The question here is how to take this opportunity to create a new type of discussion with the companies and take advantage of the dual or new page of zero trust and introduce a completely fresh, a completely new message for the network. So I saw this morning a Catalyst 9K, 2K, the new launches. That's a part of our strategy to build. We have a lot of green field here in terms of networking strategy. By the way, John, just I'm going to take a risk here in the comment. We are here working for 20 years also in Latam for security. Just thinking last year, the majority of the threats, the frauds happening in Latam, the reason was not the malware itself, the issue itself, was the lack of the answer, the lack of the infrastructure to answer, to respond, to protect itself against the threat. The network was flat, the network was not ready, was end of sales for 10 years. End of sales, was out of date. So that's the thing. The threat is reaching us faster and then moving faster because we are still have to be able to get a new war because of they are from Brazil, so.
Brazil contingents here.
Yes. My name is periodista from Brazil. And I would like to know if you, with the IoT exam, do you think it's going to change the threats? And if it is, what are the answers that you think you are looking for?
So IoT is already here, first of all. There are more devices connecting to networks, especially in service provider networks, than people. And that would tell you the level of connectivity that's being deployed on these devices, statistically more than the number of people connecting on the internet now. The threat does change in two dimensions. The first is that the number of vendors that are now joining networks is statistically much larger. And what I mean by that is a refrigerator manufacturer is now connecting to a network is different than somebody like Apple, who has been connecting to networks for a very long time. Experience in this case matters a lot. And Apple, Microsoft, Dell, IBM, HP, Cisco, we've been connecting to networks for a while, so we know, we tend to know what we have to build to be safe while participating. Most of the new vendors coming on in IoT haven't been developing software for the internet very long. So that threat changes because the number of participating companies putting technology onto networks is much greater, which means larger diversity of experience, larger diverse programs of building software, more software as a result, and there have been studies that show that no matter what you do, there's inherently going to be flaws in a certain amount of software, no matter how hard you try. So add that many companies with that much new software, with that many new devices, and yes, those threats are going to be different just because of that. And the second part is scale. As has been seen already in home routers and in baby monitors and in other camera systems, with that many deployed, if there's a flaw that can be taken advantage of, that many machines can suddenly participate in an attack, and that's a statistically large number that suddenly activate on an attack against a company or a country or an infrastructure. And parallel to that is that most of those devices don't have the same defense systems that your computers do, because the security vendors oftentimes cannot write software that would work on all of those, because power or the CPU and horsepower of the computer on the device essentially don't have the ability to run it. the way most PCs do. So what are we doing about it? Well, in truth, this is part of that strategy for Cisco. There's only, and I mentioned this a minute ago, and I've re-emphasized it now, everything touches a network, which means we can have an incredibly critical role with our customers in protecting all of those devices that are connecting. We do this in a variety of ways. Umbrella happens to be one of them, because every computer and every IoT device uses DNS as an underlying capacity and capability. So that instantly can be consumed by IoT devices through service providers, for example, or even enterprise companies. And the further and further we embed security into all networking, in switches, routers, wireless access points, means that all of those IoT devices will be connecting to that network, and the network itself can have a powerful effect of protecting all the devices that can't protect themselves. So that was the long game of our thesis and our strategy in building what we've built, is that we think the network is a control point, and there aren't many left, that allow you to protect anything that connects when so many different vendors with that much software and that much scale actually connect to it. So that's how we see it in our world.
Hi, I'm Pablo from Buenos Aires. Do you think we can think DevNet is a platform to innovate in security? So your partners or other ISVIs can build some APIs to develop new security technologies, and there are some APIs developing of that, and some that are more interesting than others, or that you can recommend some new technology trends that we can build on there?
So because I couldn't hear you completely, but let me make sure I got your question right. Do we see this as a platform to innovate on top of? Did I get the basis of that question?
Yes, yeah, we can build on DevNet, we can build some new security on DevNet, we can develop some new APIs, and so we can innovate in security in new ways.
Right. So, yes, absolutely. One of our commitments in this implementation of our security strategy is API-based. And for a couple of reasons. We know no matter what, we'll have our customers wanting not to have to run a console for everything that we build, plus every other vendor that they have. The second is, we actually believe in the long term of a messaging infrastructure that allows one system to signal to another system, hey, I've seen something, you need to protect against it. In our world, we first did this as Cisco AMP, which is Advanced Malware Protection, where an endpoint might see a threat, and then the web and email gateways and Umbrella all might get new information that said, I've seen something, through APIs. The longer game is multi-vendor, and that's what we've called PX Grid, where we have many vendors, including us plus competitors, that are sending messaging information across these well-documented APIs, and open standards based, by the way, that threat information exchanges can have one system talk to another one, no matter who made it. To innovate on top of that, though, I think is where the fun becomes, which is innovation on data. To me, in our industry, the innovations that you've seen with StealthWatch in Lanco, the company that we bought, the investigator interface that OpenDNS has that we now call Umbrella, and the innovation in work where you're connecting data that's coming off systems and linking them, is where the real innovation happens. Where you see patterns in data that allow you to see threats globally or locally faster. and then create better and more effective ways for security operations people to not have to look at everything, but to have autonomic responses, because the data says that's a problem, and the systems respond before a person gets involved to protect a company, a device, a data center, or a country. This is where I think the next version of innovation on top of these APIs comes. And there are plenty of examples where we have literally hundreds of companies working in our partner world, where we've essentially opened up the capacity to start using data and build new ways of using it to respond to threats. Because that's something I think you have to unlock to allow experiments in education, research, and then certainly startups, smaller companies, and then eventually big companies. So that is, we don't believe we'll have every answer at our company. We believe that if we open up our scale to research, we'll have new companies come along that will innovate even better than we have. And then we'll continue to innovate in our domains in parallel. So we're going to build, we're going to partner, and of course, as I said a minute ago, we're going to buy.
To take advantage of this comment, give you guys that information. We have a center of innovation in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. That's exactly responsible for to bring these type of companies to create these new integrations. And we have some examples already done in Latam. Just to give you one example is we have a company here that we have created an integration PS Grid to do identity analysis with eyes integrated with Fitbit. So you can see if you are alive or sleeping when you try to log in. So this type of information is running in the say, financial segment, for example. So we have this thing here. Here Latam is just a concept or a PowerPoint thing is real inside of system.
And by the way, just as a funny aside, imagine if you're not allowed to go to work until your step count is high enough. Because your Fitbit is actually saying, you haven't exercised yet, you can't come to work. That's a possible, I mean, that's where healthcare and security and companies could all come together in a very interesting combination. You've got yours already.
I'm Fernando Reyes from IT Channels Mexico. I see three threats in the market, in the real market. Now there is the DOS attacks that looks like real traffic in the network, the user that can pick anything in the computer, and the vulnerabilities in the servers. What can do this approach, the server-first approach, to solve these threats?
DDoS threats actually have to be solved in a network also. We had originally thought back in 2004 that the most advanced technology to protect against DDoS was at the end, if you will. So there was the internet and you'd stop it at the edge of your perimeter. The truth of it is though, that only could last so long because eventually the size of DDoS volume would overwhelm the connection from the internet to you, and so stopping it here wouldn't work. So our original thesis worked for a while, and then we switched gears and said, no, we've actually got to help service providers protect DDoS threats because that's where it can be stopped, is in the core of the internet when the activity is coming onto the network or trying to commit you or I as the destination. So our work with security and service providers in NetFlow and DNS and filtering software that helps pull out bad traffic has been how we've chosen to go after it. We don't build much specific technology just for DDoS itself, but most of our network devices, well, I should say all of our network devices, packet process anyway. And so the service providers have programmed on top of our APIs in order to protect against DDoS threats themselves. So that's our approach for that one. There's an interesting version of this, though, in DDoS inside a company. And so sometimes DDoS isn't an internet-based attack. It's actually where computers inside an organization attack each other. And this is why we started and continue to provide filtering and dynamic access lists and dampening and black hole on networks inside a business, because you also want to disrupt that attack from disrupting you. So you're stopping a DDoS, but it's not from the internet, it's from inside. On the users, yes, all of you are a bit of trouble. But users, in my experience, are not trying to do the wrong thing. It's just incredibly difficult to figure out what the right thing is, because the right thing looks a lot like a wrong thing. And what I mean by that is a wrong link and a right link are both blue, and a good attachment and a bad attachment are both an attachment. So our work in users has been partially Duo, where we're getting strong multi-factor identity so that it's a proof of a person and an ability to ensure to make that easy. To remove passwords, fixed passwords that is, which are constantly used against us. Even if they're complicated, they're still used against us. And AMP, which is our endpoint and infrastructure-based malware protection on every computer that can be installed. Last but not least, though, is again where we realized we could use the power of what we've built. So my daily life on my computer is, I'm here at the facility at Moon, I'm connecting to wireless here, I might be connecting back to Cisco in some VPN connection. My phone and I are married, and it's constantly mobile. And in each and every case, if I'm not connected to Cisco, that means all the protections that Cisco provides when I'm connected to Cisco aren't there. And it's because I'm on my own with my computer connected to, for example, the Sunrise building of Moon and their wireless network. Or my phone is connected to AT&T MX right now. So we use AnyConnect and the integration with Apple iOS to start protecting these through DNS, and AnyConnect mobile roaming, as we call it, for all the devices that corporate VPN software is connected. It stays maybe not connected to Cisco, but it still hangs around and starts to protect me by using the umbrella service and protecting me anyhow, even if I'm roaming. So all of this is an attempt to help users quietly and safely protect themselves without you all having to see it every moment, because that's not helpful either. And if, for example, you have an email or a USB thumb drive that's plugged into, say, your Mac right now, AMP will analyze the files. It'll watch to see if it's trying to change the wrong type of settings on your computer or install malware. It'll report that information to the consoles of your company or your own console if you were doing it yourself. And then it'll keep the history of this for a pretty significant amount of time. Why is that last part important? Because we may not know a file is a problem today, but tomorrow we might learn it is. And we can go back in time and say, yesterday you had that file, you clicked on that, it installed something, and we need to remove it because we remember that that happened. Your computers and our systems cooperating actually help you help the user. Which brings me to vulnerabilities, which was your third category. I think I've touched a little bit of that with AMP. And Ghassan's absolutely touched on that with regards to where Latam and frankly most of the world needs to continue to invest money, which is maintaining current infrastructure and patching it. Patching is not something that you typically go up and say, I need a patching budget. Not really exciting discussion. In truth, though, it's one of the core measures of every business is how quickly is a patch available and applied to mitigate that vulnerability. It's one of the ones we measure our own company on. It's in what we call the universal security metrics, which a woman on my staff, Sujata Ramamurthy, has published online and it's openly available, because we think it's one of the most critical measures for the success of security programs that exists. And it's not something you buy from us, it's a behavior. And it's essentially, it's one of the things, candidly, I'd be curious to know how many of you have upgraded in your Macs onto Mojave. How many of you are getting the little warnings that say new software is available, could you please update, and haven't yet? Right, we all do this, right? And it's free in a way of looking at it. That gives your computer more of a chance against the threats, and it's something we have got to just do better than we do right now.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Octavio from Mexico City, and I would like to know your opinion about how blockchain technology is adding up or not adding up to overall security, because for many companies and even governments, organizations, this kind of decentralized validation of security is like the new ideal solution to any future threats that might come. So I'd like to know your opinion about it.
You sure you don't want to do this? Gassan was going to answer that, but he thought I should answer another question. A couple of things on blockchain. So, like with anything new, it's its own platform to innovate on top. One of the powers of blockchain can be, for example, validated software. You would know for sure that you're installing something legitimate, and that would remove the possibility, for example, you'd install malware. That's an exploration in research right now. There's also an exploration in payment systems to reduce fraud for banks, which banks are starting to embrace in blockchain. That's sort of a security problem, but it's really more of a fraud problem than anything else. And then there's this notion of identity on blockchain, which is this idea that you could have multiple identities represented in the internet. Because I'm John Stewart at Cisco, but I'm also just John Stewart outside of Cisco. I'm John Stewart a dad, and I'm John Stewart a son. And the way that's seen on the internet could be different if I needed it to be. I'm also a board of advisors and a board member of other companies. So you could almost experiment with identity on blockchain and see it in a different way. Here's the thing though, blockchain is so new that it's experiencing something that almost every really new innovation has, which is a massive amount of experiment. And that's really helping. What has to happen though is those experiments need to go on longer so that we actually figure out what works. In a way of looking at the security industry, or even just the IT industry, you hear things like cloud. And if you look at cloud version 1, way back when, that didn't work out really well. It was really bumpy and a lot of experiments went wrong. And then eventually Amazon figured out how to do infrastructure as a service, Google figured out how to do it, Azure and Microsoft figured out how to do it. And the economics and the scale, suddenly made sense a lot better than they used to. Blockchain's in the same situation. We actually publish on blockchain, by the way, both threats on it, a way to stop threats with it, and then other uses of it on blogs.cisco.com quite a bit. And the Talos team posts information about blockchain attacks as well. And the other thing to remember is blockchain isn't just one thing. There are many blockchains. And so this other experiment is which ones and how will the governance of blockchains work? Because one of the interesting side effects of blockchain is if you put something malicious on blockchain and say it's good, if you trust that blockchain, you would then think it's good when it's not. And so these all are operating in governance models. We haven't figured out yet, but it's fun to be a part of because these experiments, I think, will carry us a long way.
Now he's going
to
No, it's a good thing. I was wanted to see his answer because I was the panel. I was invited to do a panel from blockchain with Santander banks, different banks. I thought, what are you doing here? So it's hard. It's a hard topic, but that's the point. I think, giving my perspective around it, I think we have so many other things to discuss around cybersecurity. So many things that are not ready. Then the customer is going to put another complex thing on the table. Like John said, it's more like a fraud, and now we can want to look this as a cybersecurity tool, right? In my opinion, just to conclude the session, so we have reached the time, the customer don't have an answer for a simple question like this. If you receive or receive a threat, we receive a new threat, you're under attack, who's gonna call? Who's gonna help you? They don't have this answer, they don't have this agreement. Today, the services agreements are pretty much a deployment. They are buying a product and deploying a solution. They don't have a services agreement to help them when they really need. So if you don't have the answer for this question, why bring that more complex situation to the table? So that should be my complementary solution answer to challenges.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys.